Today on the show, strategy plus action equals the weed-like power of collaboration. Great coaches and consultants like you have the ability to change people's lives and transform entire organizations. And your impact can often go far beyond the clients you work with. One of the reasons I love working with coaches and consultants is because of that ripple effect. This show is here to highlight your expertise and empower you with resources and new ideas to grow your business. Welcome to Strategy in Action. Stu Heinecke is on the show today, and we have an absolute blast in our conversation. I had the good fortune to meet Stu on LinkedIn. He is just an incredible guy. He's a Wall Street Journal cartoonist, amazing author of Get the Meeting, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, and his latest book, just so fantastic, is How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed. And he is absolutely doing that with his business and his core IP around this idea in his latest book. And that's what I really wanted to dig into with him on this episode, is this idea of collaboration. Stu refers to it as radical collaboration. I love that so much. And, we dig into it around this concept of having something to collaborate around. And I think that's the big giant takeaway from all of this. Where he's seeing the success in this is because of this idea and this concept that he's put forward in the book of how to grow your business the way weeds grow and take over, and putting those correlations there. But that also becomes this anchor point that people can grab onto and go, oh, I love that concept. I love that idea. We could do this thing with what we do and this idea of growing your business like a weed. And now it's just that basis of collaboration, right? It's making that easy. And that's what I encourage everyone to find in their own business, is certainly that unique selling proposition that we hear about all the time, right? Why should people buy from you, right? What's unique about that? But going, several steps beyond that and really working towards being that category of one, and having that anchor concept of your own that people can just grab onto. If they are the perfect candidate for collaborating and sharing audiences, sharing clients, whatever that may be, then it should just resonate with them instantly. And when you put that out at a big level, you'll have those potential collaborators reaching out to you because it's just so obvious once it's out there and they have something to grab onto. We really dig in around this subject. I love it so much, and I think it's a really powerful tool for you to be able to use in your own business. All right, let's jump in. Stu Heinecke, welcome to the show.
Jason, thank you so much. Great to join you.
Oh, this is a blast. I'm so excited to talk to you. From books you've written in the past on getting those meetings, finding those unfair advantages, that alone, wow, I love that stuff. Gets my brain rolling. And now with your latest book, How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed. Oh my gosh, so many questions around there. As I was listening, because I listen, an audiobook guy, but then also, just came out of that in weeks after. And as I started to apply that to my business and what I'm building, just fascinating stuff. And I want to give folks some geography there, a little bit of that thesis of the book and some of that. But then really dig in today on one aspect in what you've got going on because of this book right now and the collaborations that you've shared with me. I'm so excited for you that I really wanted to dig into this topic, because I think it's something that so many people can take advantage of and utilize and do in their own lives. So first off, give us a little context around this latest book.
Well, the old book is the old books. They were about getting meetings, and really that's about really cultivating an unfair advantage. Because if you can get meetings with virtually anyone, then that's a big advantage in your marketplace. So, but But then extending ffurther, my latest book is called How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed, which sounds like a joke. Actually, I mean, even I'm listening to it going, it doesn't have the same ring as, let's say, Blue Ocean Strategy, or but in fact, it's a very serious book, and it's about we all know what it means to grow like a weed, and that's known all over the world. We're very familiar with it. We see it. We've lived it. We've watched it throughout our lives. We know exactly what they do already, but we don't actually, because we don't know. We see them. We see the results of what they're doing, but because they just grow and they spread and they aggravate the hell out of us. But what are they actually up to? And so that's what the book's about. I mean, there's an origination story. I was driving down the Santa Monica Freeway one day, and I noticed a dandelion growing out of a crack in the concrete median, and it's it's something that we see that kind of thing everywhere all the time. Well, not now, it's winter, but otherwise during their growth season, we see it all the time, and they spread. They find every possible opportunity to take root, and certainly a dandelion is a great example of that. They got these seeds that, I mean, you could drive by and say, how did it do that? How did it pull that off? But we know exactly how it pulls it off, because it has those seeds that fly around and they probe every possible opportunity to take root. And so that's an unfair advantage. If you think about, let's say, that versus apple trees or petunias or daisies or pine trees. I have these giant Douglas fir trees right outside my house. I mean, we're in a forest of them. They grow like 120 feet tall. They're huge, but they don't spread much. They just drop these cones, and that's it. That's the extent of their spread strategy, which is basically nothing. And meanwhile, you've got dandelions, and they will spread everywhere. They'll probe everything, every possible opportunity, and that's pretty impressive. And so, as I was driving by, I thought, well, what is it about weeds? What exactly is it? I mean, I know what the seeds do, but what is it about weeds that makes them so special? Do they have a unified model for growth? And if they do, is it something that we can apply to our businesses? And it turns out they do have one. They do have a model. And I think that model, and I call it just sort of to encapsulate it, I call it weed strategy. Probably doesn't sound great either. Like, hey man, weed strategy, sure. But weed strategy is, I think, actually the theory of everything about growing anything.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because this is a topic in and of itself, but like, I found myself throughout the whole book of this push and pull, right? Of these horrible stories, I'll say, of the power that these weeds have, and fight, like evolving to fight, Roundup, and taking over. If it gets one little root, it's done and destroyed. So there's this negative, because we do have that connotation too, right? Of just like, we don't want weeds in our yard. We don't want this. But, oh my gosh, that's powerful. Oh, wow. Yes. If I treated my message the way that dandelion treats its seeds, holy smokes, that's a game changer, right? And I think that big giant lesson in that is there's always something to learn in even the person you hate, the ideology, you can find, if you can be that kind of person who steps back and is worried less about being right in that moment and more worried about, what can I take from this? What is this? Yeah.
I don't have to be right, just what works.
Did you fight that at all? Was that any part of you that came up of like, there's such a negative connotation of weeds? Was there a concern of just like that association, even though it was so powerful?
Yeah, you know what though? I think that's actually the opportunity. I think that's where the opportunity lies. If you think about it, you have this thing, right? And you just change it just slightly. You just sort of change your perception of it just slightly. So it could be a very negative thing, but you change that perception just slightly, and all of a sudden, boom, this completely different impression just explodes from it. And so I think that's true of weeds, because right now we're all thinking of weeds. I'm not, but we're all thinking of weeds as pests, because that's what really you could change the word weed to pest, because anything that pesters us, we'll call it a pest, and that's basically what what weeds do. But if you look at why we're calling them that derogatory term, I suppose, it's because they're so aggressive. They're so brilliantly adapted to capturing territory and keeping it and defending their turf, I should say, and so on. That we just have a hard time dealing with them in our yards and in our farmland and in our in our gardens. So we get frustrated with them. So it's almost like an epithet of it's just a frustration. That's all it is. But I have to tell you though that after I hear this a lot. That after people hear about weeds and hear me talking about their strategy and really how miraculous they are, suddenly I just hear from them a lot afterwards. They're saying, "I heard your interview," or after our interview, I've been looking at weeds completely differently. And if you go outside after this, if you're anywhere where weeds actually still are, I mean they're dormant here in the northern hemisphere at the moment, but if you just step outside and watch them, it's just amazing. They're just so well adapted, so well evolved to grow faster than the other. So they're more aggressive than the other plants around them, and they're more aggressive in their approach to spread. I mean, we talked about dandelion seeds, but there are others. There's some seeds that spread as far as I think it's something like 300 miles. Canada fleabane does that, depending on which direction the wind's blowing. And I mean, dandelions are they're kind of like a light version of weed, and they're trouble enough. But there are like they pop out. I have something like 15,000 seeds per plant over a 5 to 10 year lifespan, and that's a lot of seeds. But then when you think about, let's say, water hemp, this plant that's been invading farmland across North America, that thing puts out up to 4.8 million seeds per plant. Not 15,000. It's 4.8 million. It's an annual, so it all happens every year. And I mean, like some of these plants, they're so alien because they're so well adapted to growth. It's incredible. So we should be learning, and we should be emulating some of the things that they're doing.
Yeah, that relentlessness, right? And I think people fall into the trap too of being too conservative with their product, their offer, their message, their world-changing opportunity, that if they would just get it out there more, but I don't want to bother people. And that's such a detriment to their mission. And it goes right along with your other books in finding those unfair advantages, right? Finding that unique thing. And I don't understand it, but I've seen it so much of just like, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put a sales message in my show, or whatever that is. And it's just like, why not? Do you not believe in what you're doing?
Some of it. I just came from a conference, and some of the speakers just wanted to share insights, and others wanted to make sure we knew exactly what they did, in their company. And which one do you think is more effective? I'll tell you, it's the ones that are sharing insights that's more effective. But so some of that should be, and I don't know whether I would call that conservative. I think it may be timid, or they're trying to do the right. It's really what it is. They're trying to do the right thing. But I just sort of, if we describe weeds, there are a couple of lines of copy that I end up using a lot. For example, weeds always deal with what is. So that's a really hard thing to do. If you think about it, that really goes straight to their mindset. They do have a mindset, even though they don't have brains. They definitely have a fierce mindset. But they deal with what is. They do it very efficiently. They do it with just like sort of deadly efficiency. They don't care what's going on. They don't care about what they think because they don't think. They don't have emotions that they're not clouded by that. They just deal with what is. And so that's part of it. They deal with what is. They never do anything without an unfair advantage. Man, if we don't have unfair advantages, let's say in our businesses, that's a pretty obvious one. But even in our careers, just personally, if we don't have unfair advantages, we don't really go very far. Nothing happens because it's really easy to push us aside. But with unfair advantages, and by that, I don't mean that they're actually unfair. I like not Sam Bankman-Fried kind of unfair. It's just, I would say it's the way that your competitors might describe it. They see what you're doing and they say, man, that's unfair. How on earth are we going to compete with it? So it's that kind of unfair. It's like
right, but everyone has access. Everyone could do it. Yeah,
yeah. Sort of that. But the fact is that they're unfair because you get it. You get to do it uniquely. It's just you, right? So it's that's what makes it. That's why your competitors think it's unfair. So they never do it. So again, they always deal with what is. They never do anything without an unfair advantage. They always, or I should say, they never do anything alone. It's always at scale. When you see a dandelion in your lawn, look up. You'll find lots of them. You'll find dozens or hundreds of them. And that's what gives them their power. It's not just one dandelion, for example, showing up in your lawn, because all you'd have to do is yank it and you're done. That's not what this is. So that, and then they always focus on what makes them win, which is, in other words, is their process. They have a process that's been honed over millions of years, tens of millions of years. I mean, the fossil record says the first flowering plants showed up on Earth about 145 million years ago. And I've got to think that some of those, at least, are today's weeds, because they are survivors. So, but they've had all this time then to hone this process, which is just baked into their DNA. It's their DNA instructions. And so they don't have to be trained. They all do it. They run it like a program, like a computer runs a program. And so again, with just deadly efficiency, but they're always focused on what makes them win. And that process is also a living process. So we could learn a lot from this. If we have defined processes, they're often stodgy. I don't know, they're just bureaucratic. It's rule books and all that, regulations, which doesn't excite anyone. But if we're focused somehow else on what makes us win and how we can all sort of act as experts, so that expertise and gained experience is mapped across the organization, that's different. And then if it's also a living process that responds to challenges and just new conditions.
And that constant feedback, adjust. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of those things cause weeds to behave in a way that we certainly would be really well served to emulate in our businesses and in our careers.
Big time. And that's a great lead in too of this topic around collaboration, because it's a little like, like your book coming to life, right? In some of the collaborations that you're now having because of this book, and, sharing as much as you'd like. But I really love this fact, and part of that, not just the exponential power of teaming up with another person, another organization, but what you have, and it seems like what spurred a lot of these collaborations is not just like, oh, Stu wrote a book, that's interesting, but this really powerful core concept of doing exactly what you did, which is looking at it just this way, and that makes everyone go, oh, wow. And having that to point to, having that as a beacon, it makes that collaboration easy for other people. It makes it easy for them to go, oh, I could use that here. That could be perfect for us here. Share with us a little bit of what you've been experiencing lately along those lines.
Oh, you mean well, I mean, so again, I mentioned that weeds never do anything without an unfair advantage. They never do anything alone. They're natural collaborators. I think the other thing is that they thrive best in disrupted ground. That's interesting because we're always going through disruption. So is it the theory that'll allow us, or is it the body of strategy that'll allow us to thrive no matter what's happening? Because that's what weeds do. If they find disrupted ground, in other words, yards and farmland and so on, we disrupt it, or fire, maybe forest fires. But when they find it, they immediately fill the vacuum. So it's not that they're built just for disruption, but they're built so I should say they're so well evolved to take advantage of anything, any opportunity. So they thrive no matter what. And I think it probably is the theory or a strategy model that can help us or cause us to thrive during recessions, for example. Wouldn't that be amazing? Because that's really tough to do. So yeah, you would ask though, how is it showing up? And I think that the thing that's really struck me is that I've been seeking out collaborations in a lot of new ways that I'd never thought of doing before, or never would have considered before, or might not have had the opportunity to do before. So, for example, I'm setting up collaborations with top sales, or not sales, but all kinds of top thought leaders, so authors, and actually, I've teamed up now. One of my collaborators is a book publisher, another one is a magazine publisher, and then some gurus in ideation and sales and branding, and management, and we're putting together these weekend strategy, or I should say, weekend growth summits. And these are really cool because, well, I'm going to team up with each. So each one will be just a collaboration between myself and that other person, just that one other person. So whether if their expertise is in sales, then we're going to have a sales-related growth summit. We're going to talk a lot about sales as a way to, because sales is fuel for growth. So it's critical for growth. So it's quite germane. Or branding. Branding is critical because that's your seed strategy, and probably seed pod strategy, but that's how people become aware of you and form the intent to do something with you, to transact with you in some way. And so without supercharging that, you're not going to grow either. Why? Dandelions don't grow without seeds, So what are those? And we build those out. We ideate those. And so anyway, so we're putting together these growth summits, and they just last a weekend. They're going to be very small groups. It's a small workshop of maybe 10 or 20 people, and high dollar per seat. And because these groups they're so small, they're portable, I guess is the best way to put it. So I'm saying to these collaborators, look, let's make each one of these very special. Let's say, let's put these together in places that are sort of bucket list locations or destinations. Kind of like watching. We were talking about this earlier before we started, but last week I was at Sales 3.0, and we got to watch a launch of the Falcon, one of the Falcon rocket ships. So Elon Musk's rocket ship from Cocoa Beach. We're all standing out there in our dress shoes, it turned out, but on the beach, and we're watching this thing go up and then come back down. Wow, what an incredible thing! And for me, that was a bucket list experience. So
heck yeah.
So we're going to put these in these places where, like, let's say, I'm going to just ask you, Jason, if we were doing one, you and I, and I said, let's put this into a bucket list location, where would you want to do it?
Oh wow, I would think.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, I would think top of a mountain somewhere, right? Like I would think.
Yeah, summit. We could go skiing. We could do it at Sun Valley, for example. That'd be a cool one, right? And go skiing as well, and or really there are many other great resorts in Colorado and so on. That'd be a cool one.
Yeah. Bali, somebody, or experience too comes to mind. Like, yeah, something that maybe not skydiving, because that's not for everybody, but almost that experience kind of thing cool. Too. Yeah.
It would be pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know if everyone would go, and I think that might be a barrier. Like, I have to skydive if I'm doing this, but we could certainly do it. Yeah, that'd be a blast to do that. Well, so far we have them set for the Louvre, and I think Vail. I'm not sure about that one. Maybe Vail, maybe Beaver Creek, but somewhere a ski area. And then Barcelona and Dubai and Sedona so far. These are really exciting. I can't wait to do them. And we'll meet for the weekend, and each time we do these, they'll turn out totally differently, because it's a collaboration in terms of content. It's a collaboration between weed strategy and just sort of that framework, that growth framework that really any B2B specialty fits into. I mean, we mentioned sales is fuel for growth, so that fits in perfectly. Branding fits in perfectly. Ideation fits in perfectly. Management fits in perfectly. All of these things fit right into, they tuck right into the weed strategy model perfectly, because usually what they are about setting up or creating new unfair advantages. So that fits the weed strategy perfectly. So so they're going to be a blast. So we're going to do this. I get to, if we think about, let's say from a business perspective, I now get to work with these gurus, these really very prominent people who've got great client bases that I don't have. I mean, or let's say people that I don't have in mind. And so that's great. I mean, that's a spread, big spread. And then just even beyond that, though, we'll be doing some things afterward. We may have some upsells, and that'll be interesting. But even if it's, let's say, someone says, I want to have you come in and consult with me on my business as a result of our session here, I'm splitting the revenue 50-50 with my partner, whoever the collaborator is. I'm just saying it's you and me anyway. If they just have me work on it, I don't care. It's you and I. You and I are partnering on it anyway. So just sort of, I'm seeing collaborations in completely new ways. I don't think I ever would have considered doing that before. But now I'm thinking, why not do it? I mean, if that collaboration resulted in new business, new incremental business, it is by definition business I wouldn't have had. So I'm not calling it a partnership. I think that's too formal, too legal. But in that collaboration, it's almost like seeing new colors I've never known existed. It's really amazing. And that's just the start of it. That's sort of the tip of it. That there are collaborations happening in a lot of different areas that are just blowing my mind. So does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it also brings up the point, besides having, the concept that you've presented in the book as this beacon that other people can grab onto, it's also happens to be the perfect thing that just makes everything else better. So it's this natural fit, because whatever you're doing, like you mentioned at B2B space especially, it's just going to, if you apply this strategy to that, it's exponential. It's crazy. It's wild. So I think those are the two things to really grab onto for people out there who are looking to expand through collaboration, is have that thing that someone can point to, like, oh, okay, I get that. Oh, I see. But then also have it be something that supports all these other areas.
Well, yeah, I think it transforms whatever it is you're doing into something much, much bigger and just totally different, far beyond what you might have done on your own. And so the summits, as an example, if I could do growth summits myself, I probably wouldn't make as much. For one thing, I would only be accessing the people I know. And that's all just one-to-one leverage, which is not what we want to do in our businesses or in our lives, I suppose. But we don't want to just do everything at one-to-one leverage. But some one-to-one leverage is good, that's useful. But if you do everything at one-to-one leverage, you're limiting yourself. You won't scale because of that. It prevents you from scaling. And there's one other example that I might share with you, which is that I have in the book I mentioned launching a new award to recognize weed like spread and growth among entrepreneurs and startups, and it's called the Total Weed Award. I'm going to be calling people total weeds, and they're going to be going, "Oh my God, Stu, I'm so honored." so it's going to be it's already been a lot of fun. I've been calling people total weeds anyway, but I teamed up with, or I am teaming up with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center to do this. I called up the director who wrote the foreword for the book, so it's already a collaboration, but she wrote the foreword for the book, and I said, Nicola, I have this award that I've mentioned in the book, and I need to start it up, and I'm just wondering, could we collaborate? Could the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center become the home of the award? And she said, yeah, well, you know what? That sounds really good. And I said, we could sell sponsorship, and I don't need the sponsorship money. So why don't we stipulate that 100% of whatever comes in from whatever revenue comes, but I think it's mostly from sponsorship, would go directly to the center. So it becomes a fundraiser for you as well. She's saying, yeah, that's great. I mean, that's a good thing for them, right? I mean, that's a good thing for a nonprofit to bring a new, I think it's perfect. Bring a new award that draws in more sponsorship revenue, and that gives the sponsors great. I mean, the thing is, everyone wins. That's what a collaboration is by definition. So everyone wins. The sponsors get a new window of visibility among entrepreneurs and startups and VCs and investors, et cetera. And then the center gets a new stream of revenue that's great. I mean, not just revenue, but also notice. I mean, it's a seed pods or a seed strategy for them as well, because it's staying with them. I'm not taking it somewhere else. It's staying with them, and I get something out of it too, because we're growing in a media partner, and so we'll have plenty of visibility for the event. But well, where does this concept come from? Well, it comes from my book. So the book is going to get a big boost from that as well. We all get something from it, and we all get something that makes what we're doing bigger and better and more fascinating because we're doing this. So these collaborations, they're blowing my mind. I can't wait to see where they take me next, or take all of us next. But it's a great way to do business.
Oh yeah, and I love the just a mental frame, right? And you get this reading the book, right? You get you start to expand, and that's everything, because even though she wrote the foreword to your book, she's familiar with you, she's familiar with your work. She never would have sat there in her office by herself one day and go, you know what we should do? We should come up with this award. Like, you go in and you do the work for her, right? You present this fully developed concept, right, that could benefit everybody, and just enough open-endedness to, hey, you bring your awesomeness to this as well, and let's see what we can do, right?
Yeah, it's all about creating, again, it's all about creating a new unfair advantages for each other, for yourself and for each other, and more of them come about because of it, as opposed to, let's say, doing it all on your own. We can't do it all on our own. And maybe that was probably the message of how to get a meeting with anyone, because, if you can't get meetings, you will do everything alone. So, but we're always bringing those. I think it is also always about bringing new unfair advantages to people, and so we were really talking about the collaborations, as the sort of seeing new colors that never existed before. It's sort of the experience of it, and I'm just thinking, okay, who else? Like, who's the ultimate? Who can I collaborate with? And I won't say who he is, because I have someone definitely in mind. It's not Elon, but I have someone definitely in mind, and I think it could make sense. And I want to just do it. I want to just find out how high can this extend, for one, but who is it possible to collaborate with? It's probably possible to collaborate with just about anyone.
Yeah.
You got to bring unfair advantages, got to have those, or else they won't consider it. But when you bring them, and you bring just the right ones, God, it's amazing who you get to collaborate with.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing too, and that's, when you spoke earlier about you sort of defining that unfair advantage, and people have their connotations and all of that kind of stuff. The one person goes like, "Well, I can't do that." It's like, okay, then what can you do? Where's yours?
What are you gonna
yours
do?
That you can cultivate that, right? You can go create it.
When I wrote, I'm going to mention the other book. When I wrote How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, I was writing it partly from the standpoint that, I guess, just based on my origination story. I'm a cartoonist as well, so and I've been using cartoons in marketing my whole career, but really what I've been doing is using them to create unfair advantages. That's it. That's really what I've been doing, and they do create unfair advantages because readership surveys show that they're almost always the best read and remembered parts of magazines and newspapers, cartoons. So, well, okay, then there's a device that gets people's attention, but then if you think about the nature of humor, it's about truth being revealed in a twist. It's why when we laugh at something, we're always saying, "Oh my God, that's so true." Well, all of it then just sort of melds together and becomes a platform to create unfair advantages. And my unfair advantage is that I was able to bring unfair advantages to my clients, but the unfair advantages that I brought to them were, we used this phenomena, the cartoons, this device, with personalization. So the cartoon's about you, about each recipient, and we used it to create higher response rates. That's really what it is. It's just when they put a piece of mail out, I helped them get more response from that set of mailings that they were going to do anyway. So those are all unfair advantages that make everything possible. And if we're not, I don't know, I think you just mentioned, or you just commented that if you don't have unfair advantages, then well, what am I going to do? And I use cartoons, but you don't have to use cartoons, for crying out loud. She says almost anything can create unfair advantages, and you need to be cultivating those.
Big time. And that's it. You have an extra, Wall Street Journal cartoonist, not just a cartoonist. And that's your goes into your VIP statement, like you talk about in the book, and creating that. And I love that aspect, because again, here's mine. This is what I did and the results, but here's how you now go craft your own, how you create your unfair advantage, and just really embracing the fact that it's so important. And again, I think those two different mentalities exist out there of just like, well, I could never do that, or like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do that. It's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we just have to think about it. And there are so many ways to cultivate those unfair advantages, or we probably have them. Location might be an unfair advantage for you. Just anything that you do that's unique might create unfair advantages. And I'd heard a story of a woman who knitted. She liked to knit, so she knitted some gifts to get through to these people that she wasn't going to get through to otherwise. These are all examples of unfair advantages, but they just kind of exist everywhere, and we need to recognize them. Whatever unfair advantages we have, they could be contacts. Like if you have this great network, that's an unfair advantage. That's one of these things you need to use you need to take advantage of it. So anyway, but all these unfair advantages end up creating this juggernaut, this position in the marketplace that is very hard to compete with. And that's what we all need those. If we don't have them, like if you don't have an unfair advantage in your business, you're not going to stick around. I would say if you don't have an unfair advantage in your career, you're not going to stick around.
Oh yeah. There's just too much noise, competition, everything out there. I love Scott Adams, his definition of like talent stacking, and he talks about,
he's right.
Yeah. And I love that. Like that was such a light bulb of just like, sure, I can kind of write some cartoons. I sort of know business. I'm pretty good at this and this. Nobody's as good as me at all these things together, right? Like that.
I've never heard him say that. I've come to the same. I talk about layering, or I think about it as layering. But if you layer these things, no one has that unique set of layers. He's exactly right.
Yeah, and that's and I bring that up too because like that gets into the how of exactly what you're talking about, like how to cultivate your own unfair advantage, and that's how you start looking at things instead of just like, what's the one thing I do? Well, okay, maybe there's 4 or 5 things.
Oh yeah,
I haven't ever seen people put together in that same way, and then like bring that to the world, and then to bring it full circle, talk about what we've talked about this whole time is creating that thing, that process, that beacon now that is all of this, and maybe that's you that provides it, or it's a concept, but you name it, you own it, and now you have something to point to as you go and find these collaborations and clients and all of that.
Yeah. It's, I'm still, you blew my mind with Scott, actually, because
all him.
No, that is so right. I don't know him, but maybe I should get to know him. But, when I first started, my education was in marketing. So that's great. That's, I wouldn't say that's an unfair advantage, but it starts to be one. That's why we pursue degrees. So it's that, but then I was also cartooning, and then I decided to mix the two. And when I did that, those 2 layers became a complete unfair advantage for me. No one else was like that. There are people that have come up afterward and mixed cartooning and business, but before I was doing it, like no one thought of cartoonists as being, let's say, business savvy at all. I mean, like it was oil and water, business and artistry. They just didn't mix. But in fact, they did. And when they show up and mix the two, suddenly it's an unfair advantage. These unfair advantages, they're just sort of everywhere. And And you've got to, but I think Scott, God, we got to get Scott on sometime. Talk to him about the layering because he's absolutely
yeah.
right. It's about
Yeah.
that. That's a great way to create unfair advantages.
Oh yeah, and I imagine too. Like I mean, I know kind of. I think you reference it in that book, but like this idea that people on the outskirts is like, oh, okay, well, I'll start using cartoons too, because that's the other part of it too. That is that melding of business acumen and cartoon. Like we're not talking about just send a cartoon with somebody's name in it. You go through like, well, it needs to be funny, but have this tone. It needs to be positive here. It needs to, it's an art in and of itself, not just the drawing, but the humanness there.
Well, I could tell you that because that's a really good illustration, no pun intended, but that's a really good illustration of an unfair advantage. Because when I was doing it, I recruited a lot of my heroes of cartooning into my group. So I recruited Gahan Wilson and Eldon Dedini from Playboy, and then Arnie Levin and Leo Cullum and Bob Mankoff and Lee Lorenz and so on, Donald Riley, all these really famous cartoonists, top cartoonists in the world. And I was working with them, and unbeknownst to any of us, it actually became. I think of it as a mentorship program with the top cartoonists in the world. That's what ended up happening. So, as I'm doing this, and as I'm accumulating test experience, as I was the other part of it, when we were creating these for the big magazine publishers who were the biggest users of direct response marketing at the time. So every time a test went up, we learned something. And
so you just to clarify, you got these folks, like you were hiring them to do this for a company, like to do their cartoons.
So they were part of my stable of cartoonists. So when I go and we had an assignment, I'd say, okay, these are my cartoonists. Who do you want? Whose work do you want in your campaign? So they could choose any of us. And I was amazed I ever got chosen, actually, but I got chosen a lot, probably because they were talking to me. But Gahan was part of it, and Dedini was part of it, and Leo Cullum, and so on. All these top names in cartooning. And then came the people who said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to try that for myself." So they started just, I don't know who they hired to do their cartoons, but they just came up with these just inane things. It's just these. You can see by my face, we're disgusted by what they did, but it was just crap. And they put it out, but it still looked like a cartoon on a mailing, and it was just junk. It wasn't funny. It didn't, it wasn't steered by, they would make it about, and a lot of clients wanted me to do this as well, but they'd make the cartoon about their brand, which is a great way to kill that campaign because no one cares. You don't want to get a cartoon about Geico, who cares? I couldn't wait to throw something like that away. But if the cartoon is about you being a great fisherman, let's say, and it's an offer coming from Outdoor Life magazine, that's on the money. That's something that they're going to want to frame that. In fact, we offered prints of those so that if you, with your paid order, you get an 8x10 print of it, and they'd gladly stick that up in their homes, or I don't know where they put it, but they framed them and put them up. And that's what I was doing. I guarantee you, none of the copycats ever had cartoons that anyone would ever want to put up anywhere. It was that they were stupid, So that's I guess what I'm trying to say is that's what an unfair advantage looks like in practice. I'm going out there with the best cartoonists in the world, and I'm being mentored by them as well, by the way. And then all I'm the only repository of all this test history of using personalized cartoons in mailings. So how are they going to compete with that? Those were unfair advantages, and they, that was what it looked like when someone's decided they were still going to try to horn in on that territory that I'd carved out, and they did a crappy job. And I'm sure that the test results were terrible, and I know they didn't last because I watched them just all drop away. But they didn't have the right tools. They didn't have they couldn't compete with those unfair advantages that I carried into that market.
Oh yeah, and that's the other.
So that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and that's such a great point too, mentally, to know what you've got, right, and know why. It's so important, and let them do what they're going to do. You're going to have to kind of deal with it some, but just keep focusing on what you're doing because you're so far ahead. You have that repository, that distance, that position in the marketplace with not only like doing this first, but man, all of you as imminent, cartoonists out there, it's like, okay, yeah, if they're copying, awesome. That means we're doing something right, and just keep going.
Yeah, just keep going. Yeah, exactly. Just keep doing it because there's nothing to compete with there. It's just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that also relates to what Christopher Lochhead writes in when he talks about a category of one. That's exactly what that is. It's creating a category of one. That's an unfair advantage. That's what you're doing when you're cultivating unfair advantages. We're talking about the same things, but however it shows up, those are the things that cause that prevent. Well, let's say prevent people from moving in. It's sort of like a thorn strategy in a way. We're taking this back to the weeds. They protect their turf in a number of ways, but some of them use thorns, and they're very effective.
Right.
And with however it is that we define it, or whatever term we use, whether it's category of one or unfair advantages, these are things that you need to cultivate in your business, or you won't be around. There are also things you need to cultivate in your career, or you won't be around. You won't. Let's say you won't go where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that, as I've been defining my own brand and what's sort of that one word that you fight against, I realized that it wasn't just that negative aspect of obscurity and no one can see you. To me, it's even worse is sameness, right? Like just being the flippin' beige Toyota Corolla of your industry that nobody's ever going to notice. Like that's the thing to battle against, right?
Yeah. And I live on an island. That might be another great illustration of this. I live on an island, and it's in the Pacific Northwest in Puget Sound, a little bit north of Seattle, and my town is kind of a little touristy town, or let's say the village of my town it's a touristy spot. It's cool. It's beautiful. It's a little village on a cliff over the water, so it's really cool. And but then you see these shops. So they're catering to a tourist crowd, and tourists sometimes there's certainly a season to it, and sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. And you see these shops that show up on First and Second Street in the village. And if they're selling things like, let's say, curios, or I don't know, soap and candles or incense or something like, nobody needs these things, And those are great examples of businesses that have no unfair advantages, except maybe, let's say, their location on First or Second Street. But otherwise, they have zero. When times get tough, if the economy is disrupted in some way, recession is, we're talking about recession a lot. The last several months, or like half a year, or maybe the past year, when a recession hits, those businesses are going to go under. There's no reason. There's nothing to them. There's just absolutely no substance to them whatsoever. No one needs them, and they're just going to drop away.
Yeah, imagine if you could take advantage of, okay, the one little thing I have right now is this location, right? What can I do differently that every other touristy little town in the planet has? That's something.
It's got to be something else besides those things.
Or the other way too, of like, leverage your location and your prominence in this physical location online. Leverage it globally. Like get whatever we're doing.
That could be
from this, but they still need to do it also, a little differently.
If you're just selling something like incense and candles, things that people absolutely don't need, I don't know why they ever buy them. Really, I mean, I guess okay, you can buy a candle, but you're not going to need it very often. It's just things that people don't need, and it's a business that just has no unfair advantages, and those kinds of businesses die off. Those are the ones that we hear about, the startups that 99% or 90% of the startups are gone by year 5. And small businesses, but like I know I'm going to misquote it, but if it's something like 90% of all new small businesses die in the first year or two or 3 or 4 years, those are the kinds of businesses that die off. You need businesses that have unfair advantages, or you're not going to be around.
Oh yeah.
That's also the key to thriving. You don't want to just survive. It's the key to thriving.
Right. And maybe that's the difference too of like this stuff lights us up, like thinking that way. Like it's hard not to expend energy on figuring out the solution for that soap shop, like because that's so fun and a great way to do that. And some people are just sort of, well, what's working well? Okay, I'll do that. They're the Uber of soap delivery or whatever they're going to do, right?
Yeah.
And back to Christopher Lockett, right? Like he talks about the numbers, man, that like there's one market leader, there's one king in there, and then it's like it's a sharp drop off to everybody else. And you can fight for scraps, but I think you and I and the people we surround ourselves with, we want to be those category kings because it's just more fun. It's more exciting. It's figuring that out.
Yeah. And I'm just realizing also just that another book that popped to mind is Blue Ocean Strategy, which is also the same thing. Stay out of the red water and go to the blue water because the red water is filled with blood from competitions. Find areas where you have no competitors, or maybe, I don't know. I don't want to use their metaphor too much, but you want to do things that I think probably eliminates competition in two ways. One is just that you just have this unfair advantage that just can't compete with, but also competitors can be really, really great collaborators too. And if you're collaborating, you're not really clobbering each other over the head. You're helping each other, and so in both ways, you can. There's just other ways of operating and organizing your business, and I think the weeds give us that insight into how you can do that.
Yeah, and to your point too, there's similar themes around all this. What I love with your work is I feel like it's even more attainable, right? Like I think there's you can use it at a big level, but I also go through like, okay, I'm not sure how I would create this category of one necessarily at some big global level. Maybe I'll think that direction, but I can figure out my unfair advantage today, right? I can put my VAP statement together today.
Yeah.
And start digging in, and I think it's so actionable, right? Immediately to start seeing those results and do exactly what we're talking about today is find those collaborations and come up with those.
Yeah. Just figure out what it is that you have unfair advantages, and so a lot of times I think it's just a matter, at least at first, of understanding what are my unfair advantages. What kind of layers am I in Scott's? I guess Scott's in my parlance. What kind of layers do I have? What if I put together that makes what I'm doing and who I am utterly unique in the marketplace? Because those are the starts of those unfair advantages. But you can also hear that from the collaborations that I've been putting together, those become huge unfair advantages as well. So they're sort of compounding unfair advantages.
That's a great point too. Yeah, because it is exponential, not just in maybe growing your business, let's say, but in reach, in that weed-like reach, right? Really fast, you're leveraging this person's thousands of people audience, this person's like this.
Yeah.
I mean,
but then I'm also bringing, and I'm also bringing Weed Strategy, which is for one, an unfair advantage. It's a book out. And I think this book is going to be, it's not now, but I think it'll be the top business growth title on the market. And it's not because I wrote it. Actually, it's in spite of the fact that my name is tied to it at all, or that I wrote it. But it's because the weeds themselves are so awesome. And if we just do that, if that happens for people, they're going to be saying, "Oh my God, that's right. My God, you know what? Grow like a weed. I've known that my whole life, and no, if there's a way to do this, I want it. I think that's why it'll become the biggest growth strategy book on the market. And so I bring that to these collaborators. I've got this great unfair advantage, Weed Strategy, man. It's a protected category actually, and I mean it's mine. It's my category, and so And when I bring it to someone, if I'm teaming up with someone who is a sales guru, well, great, because it's growth and sales is fuel for growth. You can't grow without sales. So our messages are going to mix together perfectly, and it gives their message and their expertise a growth framework. So this is how you're going to grow your business. This is tied directly to growing your business. This is what you need. You know you need sales. You know you want more sales, but you want more sales because you're striving for growth. So we're tying these together. It gives it a great framework for all that.
I love it. Stu, thank you so much. This is, I could talk to you about all of this for days and days. I'm just, I'm a fan of the work and the insight, and just love mentally where it takes me, and then to see it manifest in your life and the collaborations that you're putting together. I'm really impressed. So I appreciate you.
I got to say right back at you, because I watched this and I'm going, yeah, right. That's it. I'm helping. I turned it one click.
Yeah.
And that's really, really satisfying to me as well, just because there's this whole thing that we can discover together and probably collaborate on together. And it's amazing. It's just so transformational.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So what should people do? Give us an action. I've got 10 of them.
I would send them. Buy the book first. Go buy the book. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, et cetera. Wherever books are sold, you can get How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed. And I think, and get in touch with me. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, tell me that you bought the until I'll be your best friend until you're, anyway, certainly I'll be your best friend for a little while. Really, I'm thrilled, because it's such a compliment when people buy your books. And so, that's really what I mean. And so it's actually sincere. And so connect with me on LinkedIn, tell me that let me know that you bought the book. And there's lots more coming, but there are these summits that we want people to attend. So check those out on StuHeinecke.com when probably after the first of the year.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. We have a projected kind of date for the first one?
First one is so far is in April, but we're still booking them. So
Gotcha.
April, and that one will be at the Louvre in Paris. Crazy.
So amazing.
And I'm telling you, I never would have come up with this, never would have imagined doing it, but there it is.
Fantastic. Stu, Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on, Jason. Really an honor, and I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. And we'll see you all next time.
Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this show. If you want help creating authority-building video content, or even a client-generating show of your own, go to MediaLeadsCo.com and let's connect. I'll talk to you soon on the next Strategy in Action.